From the center of the universe, now in its 7th season covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos post-game reaction podcast brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant joined as always by JB, and we witnessed a pretty good close to the preseason tonight as the Toronto Argonauts outlast the Hamilton Tiger Cats 30-23. They managed to get it done. We're recording from the strangest little booth inside the core of Alumni Stadium, looking out onto the field, but unfortunately you've got the worst view of all if you're watching us on YouTube, and thank you for doing so. But we'll do our best to give you an update, go through the game start to finish, players we liked, players that could be in jeopardy potentially, and everything we saw from tonight's preseason action. JB, before we get to all of that good stuff, though, I want to tell you about Something in the Water Brewing. Longboat Pale Ale is coming. We are mere weeks away from it being released yet again for the summer season, for the CFL season. So make sure you stop by Something in the Water Brewing in Liberty Village to check out Longboat Pale Ale. And while you're waiting, try out Tortuga, try out Hazy Maitland, beer that you can get at the LCBO. And of course, if you're in Liberty Village, you got to drop by Something in the Water to pick it up yourself and try some of their other outstanding and award-winning beer. All right, JB, let's get into it. 30-23. Didn't feel like it was going to be like that. Nothing through the first quarter. 7-3 at the half. Things exploded after that. Let's go with overall takeaways. What did you see out there tonight from the Toronto Argonauts?
It was an entertaining second half. The first half was not very good. The second half was much more entertaining. 3s and 4s were out there, a little more wide open ball. Look, I thought the energy was good. As the kids say, the vibes were great. The team looked energetic. They were really celebrating a lot of the guys making plays who, may not make the squad or potentially could be practice squad guys, but you had starters out there really getting excited about guys making plays, and that's a terrific sign for a football team in terms of the energy and the attitude. So I was really happy to see that.
It felt like they legitimately cared. You had, like you said, it's the veterans, right? Like watching those guys like Davaris Daniels and DeMonte Coxie and Wyndham McManus, like guys that, they're not playing in this game to try and win jobs or anything else. They're just on the sideline. They're dressed for pregame warm-up, and that was about the extent of their action tonight. And yet they're there cheering for every guy, even guys in the fourth quarter making plays. That bench is jumping up and down. Like you say, I think that is a tremendously positive sign in terms of team building. Why don't we talk about the quarterback play to start things off? Kind of a weird rotation. I didn't know exactly where this would go. I thought Tucker Horn would probably get the most action. He did, but it wasn't the way that I thought it would go. So first, it started with Cam Dukes. He came out there, looked pretty good. I thought he had most of his action going into a very strong wind. Ended up 7 of 11 for 62 yards. Didn't really put the ball in harm's way. Didn't make any huge plays, but I didn't really see him make mistakes. I feel like maybe let's go through the rest of the QB stats, and then we can talk about what we saw from each of them. And so Tucker Horn struggled in the first half, completing I think 4 of 8 passes, and really had trouble getting the ball moving, but came in later in the game. First though, Jared Dagey came in. He's only been with the club for 4 days. He was out there and I thought looked very good in putting together that first touchdown drive, went 5 of 6 for like 70 yards and ran it in for a touchdown, but then struggled a little bit on the subsequent drives. And not always his own fault, there are a couple drops in there too. But then I was surprised to see Tucker Horn come back in the fourth quarter, and then he looked really good. He ended up finishing off the day really well, had a nice touchdown pass too, and he was the quarterback that won the game for them in the end. So that's our quarterback situation. What'd you make of it, JB? How did you see these guys play? Who separated themselves in that QB room?
I didn't think Dukes was very good. He definitely was going against the wind. I didn't think it was a great game for him. I thought the other 2 guys who came in, I think made legitimate moves towards his position on the roster. I think both moved the ball really well. Now, granted, it wasn't against 1s or even 2s, but looked confident, moved the ball well, did the same ability to get mobile. I mean, I know they love Dukes, but I think there's a legitimate chance one of them moved up the depth chart today, because I thought they looked good. Really, I thought Dukes looked the worst of the three.
In all likelihood, Chad Kelly, I would guess, is going to start the season on the injured list. I just don't see. I think it would be almost almost borderline irresponsible not to. Just, you haven't seen him out there. He hasn't been able to participate in any action. So I think you start him on the injured list, whether that's one game or six. I don't know enough to know. I don't even know enough to say what I'm saying. But I think that's how you handle this. And so I think three of these four guys, Arbuckle obviously is there, and I think it's going to be Dukes and then either Daigie or Horn. But I thought both those guys were really fun to watch. Horn has been fun this whole camp and preseason. The double blue game, he looked great. He looked great last week. He had that one, rough quarter, I guess, today, but then redeemed himself, looking really good on that touchdown drive to win the game. But Jared Daigie, without having any time in here, he was throwing in rhythm. He used his legs very well. He didn't let that dictate his game either. So often, inexperienced quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, when they see success running on the ground, they will go to that again and again. And after completing or converting a few first downs, I was looking for Daigie to see, is he going to keep running? And he didn't. He put the ball back in the air, made some nice throws. I thought that really spoke to his maturity as a young quarterback. So I think he did everything he possibly could to keep himself on the roster, but I think it's a long shot with him only having been here for a few days to say, yeah, we're going to say goodbye to anyone else on this team in favor of Daigie, who we just probably don't know enough yet. I think one of those guys, at least to start, ends up on the practice roster. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like Daigie. I thought he looked like the number 3 quarterback.
Yeah.
Especially if a guy can do that with almost no prep time. You have to love that potential. You have to love the sense of, well, what will he do if we can get a month? To me, he looked like the 3rd quarterback.
Yeah, and again, with that, especially with that first drive, that 5 for 6 where everything was in rhythm, it was catch the snap, drop, read, throw. A little bit of a struggle the next drive where he was really backed up in his own end, and we saw some happy feet. But aside from that, I thought he handled himself for 4 days, looked excellent. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a really tough decision for those coaches when they're looking at that quarterback room. Let's talk about those RBs. So we know this team is stacked with running backs. We know Kadeem Carey obviously is going to be the guy. We saw him with 3 carries tonight for 14 yards. They just wanted, I think, to get him a little bit of action, but nothing that was earth-shattering. What do you make of the other guys? We know Chop Williams is that great short yardage option. He had 3 carries for 20 yards. Kevin Brown in there for a couple of attempts, couple of runs. He was out there as a receiver a little bit as well. Jaron Mitchell, I thought, was really interesting. 7 carries, 106 yards and a touchdown. He had that 70-yarder in there, which obviously make up for a lot of those stats. But he was fast. That's what really caught my eye when he got space on those 2 long runs he had where there was room to show off that explosion. He jumped out to me.
Yeah, he looked fantastic. I thought he was, I thought that he was sort of the standout player. Again, everything is context in terms of the competition he was playing against. But I thought he and Turner Jr. were the 2 kind of non-obvious players who leapt out at me. Mitchell looked really quick, noticeably. He honestly, he looked like a starter playing against 2s and 3s. When he flashed, he just looked faster than everybody he was playing against. I thought he looked terrific. I mean, honestly, that was the takeaway from the game for me was how great Mitchell looked. He didn't just beat 2s and 3s. He looked like he didn't belong with 2s and 3s.
And I came into this game ready to dismiss him because you look at that running back room and you're like, well, they're not going to keep that many backs. And Mitchell, he's not a name. Everyone else in here is a name. And yet, yeah, I agree with you. I think he showed enough tonight that I think you have to seriously consider that, because I don't know if they've got that guy on their arsenal. I see Mac Mahan as more of an agility-based guy, not necessarily that straight-line speed. Kadeem Carey is sort of the all-round back. And yeah, you have to wonder, like Kevin Brown, I really like him as a running back. He's one of my favorites in the CFL a couple years ago, but he did have a drop today. Didn't get too many carries either, and so I wonder, when you're looking at how that running back room is gonna work itself out, I don't know. It depends. They might even only carry 2 Americans. That's possible as well. So we'll have to see how that breaks down. But I thought Mitchell did everything he could tonight to make himself an option and bringing something that the rest of that room doesn't have.
Yeah, I thought McMahon looked amazing, really. I thought he looked really good. He's looked really good. In the first game in camp, he looks confident. He looks dangerous. Every time he touches the ball, he looks dangerous. I don't know what to make of Brown being 4th on the depth chart and playing in the 4th quarter. I mean, traditionally that means that's all she wrote. For a player like that, I haven't seen him in camp. I don't know what they've seen, but I can't say I'd be surprised if he didn't make the team. It'd be very unusual for someone 4th on the depth chart to make the team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And a player like that, you need, if you're going to be a depth running back, then you have to be a special teams contributor. You got to be a difference maker, and there might be better guys on this roster in terms of being an up back or a personal protector, just in terms of size. Now, you mentioned Kelton Turner Jr. as a guy that stood out to you tonight. He stood out to me too. I think he stood out to everybody here at Alumni Stadium. 7 catches on 7 targets for 69 yards and a touchdown. Not only that, he was really looked at carefully in the return game. He was back there for just about, if not every single punt and kickoff. I thought he looked good as a returner too. What struck me though is that he didn't necessarily have that same sort of first 2-step burst that we're used to seeing from Janarian Grant, but I thought his vision really shone, where he seemed to always know where to go. He knew when he had the angle, and he got the most out of every single return. And if you can add one more thing, when you put together a night like 7 catches and 7 targets, 69 yards, a touchdown, and show yourself as an option as a returner, I think he's got to be on this roster, I think, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think he definitely. I mean, the fact that he can be a returner, makes him incredibly valuable. I was surprised Maela was out there. Again, I don't know how much to read into stuff, but he wasn't, like, from a depth chart point of view, it didn't look like he was somebody who's going to make the roster. I think Turner Jr. could potentially get there. I know they don't play the same position, but in terms of the number of wide receivers, I think they keep him. I don't think they'll try and get him on the practice squad. I think he flashed too much. I think somebody will take him.
I think the Canadians are all there. I think whether it's starting with Kevin Mattal and then Hersey Mayala, Ungerer the third obviously is going to be out there. Dejan Brissett out there in a limited fashion, but still stood out, made a couple really nice catches. Those are your Canadians. Those guys I think are all locks. But it's the American side where there's just not a lot of room. Like usually there's one extra guy on the dress roster, if that, and then a practice squad receiver, maybe 2. But I do think that Turner Jr. did everything he could to be one of those guys. And other guys I was looking for, I was looking for Demas. I thought maybe he might step up. Hooks, Sean Hooks has been really good all camp. The double blue game last week, got banged up a little bit. I saw him walk off. Were you able to assess the severity of that injury near the end there, where it looked like he kind of got gator rolled after making a really nice catch from Tucker Horn? Because if that is an injury, that's it's a pretty tough time to take it. You wonder if that could potentially cost him a roster spot.
Yeah, he didn't. I didn't think he popped enough for me for somebody that low on the chart. I was hoping for a little more. I mean, honestly, I thought McLean probably looked the best of the sort of depth receivers. They definitely want to give Hooks every opportunity to make the club. Hopefully he's okay, but I didn't see much tonight that kind of grabbed me.
McLean, I thought, had a frustrating drop, and I don't know. I have trouble finding a spot for him the same way, because where I want to put him is probably where I'm putting a Canadian receiver on that field side. So I have a tougher time knowing exactly what to do with him. But Yeah, I like the physicality. Like both he and Demas at 225 pounds or whatever they are, I think are really interesting options in terms of what you can do with them. Demas had a couple really nice blocks too, and I think he sort of made his case. Let's transfer to the offensive line. JB, we had Anim Dankwa out there at the tackle spot. He's a big individual when you have Dylan Giffen next to you and you make Dylan Giffen look small, who is one of the biggest human beings I've ever met, and Anim Dankwa just towered over him. Well, just in terms of total mass, I guess they're about the same size at like 6'8" or whatever ridiculous height they both have. I thought he looked good. I thought he did the job. I don't know if he's playing for a starting spot. I suspect not, but I thought he showed enough to be a viable option coming off the bench as a tackle. But here's the question, JB. Anthony Van Dahl looked good at center. Giffen looked good at guard. You know you've got that left side looking really solid in Doc Stater and George now over the last two games. George Moore. I don't know what you do, because right now in this game they had Hunter coming off the bench. But let's say Hunter is the right tackle. You had Nicastro and Sirocco on the bench. You had, in theory, you have Dankwa on the bench. If Hunter's starting at right guard, you can only really dress 7 O-linemen. You could dress more, but you don't. You're going to dress 7 O-linemen. Who do you sit? Like, who doesn't dress at this point? And I don't know the answer to that. They have an overwhelming amount of Canadian talent. They're already starting 4 Canadian offensive linemen, and you've got 3 backups who could be anyone from Van Dahl to Giffen to Nicastro to Sirocco to Dankwa. I don't know what to do with that. I feel like it's almost too many in a weird way, because I think whoever doesn't dress is going to get picked off that practice roster immediately. I just don't think that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully nobody hurts themselves and goes on the 6th game.
Yes. Well, we've seen teams both north and south of the border have things sometimes happen like that, but it is a talented offensive line room. JB, let's talk about the defense. Who stood out to you defensively? That's your side of the ball more than mine, for sure. What did you see that made you take some note?
I mean, Parrish only played 3 snaps, but he looked fantastic.
He looked good.
Shot out of a cannon. You know, I've been kind of harping a little bit on edge guys, and he looked great. Now, again, you know, he wasn't going against the greatest show on turf, but he looked really fast. He looked really in mid-season form. So that was great to see. Like, he absolutely was the best player on the field when he was on the field. So
is it me, or did the D-line just in general look a lot better this week than they did last week? I felt like they were in the backfield all night long, to a point where Hamilton had to start throwing screens because there was too much pressure. But it wasn't from blitzing, it was from that front 4, whoever they were. I thought Lanier did a good job getting in there. He made a couple of hits. Ojo got in there when he was in the game, came around the edge with some speed. The name's slipping my mind right now. Who's my new guy? My Campbell Fighting Camel. And I can't see because it's totally dark in here, as it was in the broadcast booth. Brevin Allen, if memory serves. Brevin Allen also just looked like a machine on a couple of snaps. Folded the left tackle back into the quarterback to contribute to a sack. So I thought this D-line was active, aggressive, and they were able to create pressure without blitzing, which to me was going to be one of the keys of this early season.
Yeah, I mean, we only have to play Hamilton's number 2 offensive line, and then we'll be set. But yeah, I mean, better than not. I thought Rutledge looked good. Thought he made a couple of really nice hits, really nice plays. I mean, he, that was a bit of a, I won't say shock. It was surprising that it looks like he's going to be the starting Sam. And he looked good. He looked the part. So I thought defensively it looked pretty good. Sunderland too flashed a couple times.
Yeah.
He laid some stick out there too. Like the Argos, I thought hit a little better this game. But Rutledge and Sunderland definitely looked good. And then a couple other guys were probably guys who aren't going to make the trip, and we don't need to harp on them.
Yeah, Will Sunderland is interesting though, because I think you have a really hard time cutting Sunderland based on what we saw from him. He's got the measurables. He seems to really carry some football intelligence with him. Knew the situation down in distance. There was a play in particular where he knew he had a blitz, and he knew that ball had to come out quick. There wasn't time for a double move. And so he sat there, waited for that ball to come out. He saw the speed out coming, and he's like, this speed out is not turning into a wheel. There's not time for it because we're sending 6. And he just absolutely came in like a missile and lit up his receiver. I'd love to see a play like that from the Troy Trojan, who made a case for keeping himself on the roster tonight.
I did love the hospital ball that was thrown. Made me think of that in the second half with Horn threw one out and got the poor guy. I mean, the guy was just playing zone and just lying in the weeds and just that was not a great choice.
Yeah, he was throwing that ball out to Kevin Brown, and he didn't realize the flats defender had flats because he trailed. He was sort of playing, basically clouding the receiver on the outside. Went with him, and then as soon as he saw Brown leak out to his side, he jammed on the brakes. He's like, "Hey, that's my flats. I'm gonna come up and make a hit." And boy, did he ever! That was not a play that Tucker Horn would be happy with.
Yeah, they definitely maybe went to the 3 to the flats a few too many times.
Too many times. There's only one other play where I saw. We did see a little bit more. Tucker Horn was a bit more human tonight. Made a couple of mistakes. There's another one too where I know he had Mayala on a clear out, and I think it was either Anderson or I think it was Anderson who had. Maybe it was McLean. One of the two of them had a dig route in behind that, basically a dagger concept. Dagger's almost always open against that cover 4 look, and it was here. And he seemed to be staring right at it. He was rolling out to his right, seemed to see it in front of him, and yet didn't make that throw. That would have been potentially a huge gain. And I just haven't really seen a Horn miss. Other than that, we've been very spoiled with really good games up and down the depth chart from Argo's quarterbacks at times. So, yeah, I was a little surprised to see that, but it's what you would expect. He's a rookie. It's his first year in pro ball, and so you're going to have some plays where you make the wrong read. Back to the defense. Sluka, playing safety tonight. Derek Sluka, who we knew as a receiver, but did come from the defensive side of the ball, was switched over to the receiver spot when he was in Indianapolis, I believe, and is now back on the defense. Playing some good safety. Did he do enough, though? We know what Tyshawn Blackburn looks like back there at safety. What's your plan week 1, JB? Like, who is your starting safety week 1? Is it Sluka? Is it Tyshawn Blackburn? Do you have to keep looking? Do you maybe cycle some of the other DBs through there? Like, maybe you take a look at McFadden, or maybe you take a look at George Jr., or maybe you take a look at Deontay Evans, and, is there somewhere else we can go when you're looking for that week 1 starting safety?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's Luka, but I agree with you. I think it would not be surprising in that first game to see like 2 guys kind of rotate as they kind of take a look at it. Good football teams will use the first couple of games of the regular season to kind of self-scout themselves. I think that position is still up for grabs. Wouldn't surprise. They definitely have riches at some of the other DB positions. So I'm sure there's going to be a temptation to try and fill a weaker position with one of the guys that you'd like to keep, but you don't need that many corners.
I thought the linebackers played very well tonight. I thought, especially considering you're not seeing McManus and Judge, they've got, like, Ryder Varga is fun to watch out there. He can play both linebacker spots. He's the player that was brought over in the trade for Dejon Allen. And it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. I expect him to get a lot of time on 2nd and 10 situations where they might take off a defensive lineman and run 3 linebackers out there just to give you a little bit of a different look, a little bit of a more pass defense friendly look. But I thought his play was really good. Jack Kassar made another very nice play. He got in on a couple tackles too, and again was tasked with shadowing running backs out of the backfield, was able to stick with them. So another nice game from him. That linebacker room you're going to be looking at for special teams contributions. They need everybody that dresses as a linebacker has to be a special teams player, especially the way you see this roster lining itself up, the way that you see the distribution of talent, especially that running back room. If they're going to keep more backs, then they've got to go. They've got to have special teams friendly linebacker play, and I think we saw that tonight, that all of these guys can contribute in special teams, but when they need to, they can step in there and play that max spot or that will spot too. Anything stand out from you on the linebackers, or did I steal your thunder and cover everything about a whole defensive position?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to
go into the depth.
Well, look, they're not sending this game to to the hall. All right, it was fine. It was freezing cold. It was sunny when the game began. It is less sunny now.
Yes.
The second half at least was entertaining, but I don't think we need to sort of record everything that was done by by the linebackers or what have you out there. It was a perfectly fine exhibition game. Nice crowd. Nice energy in the stadium. It was really great to see, like, people were into being here, and it had that wonderful kind of small town, feel. Not that close to small town, but smaller than Toronto. It was a really fun night. Game ops was fantastic. It was a terrific energy, and but probably not much more analysis needed.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And before we sign off, JB, and I do want to shout out Guelph. I think this has been a great home away from home for the Toronto Argonauts over the last few years. For them to come out here, it makes a difference. You saw it, like I was in Kingston for a week where the Ottawa Red Blacks were holding their training camp at Queen's University. It just seems to be the right thing to do for CFL teams. I feel like every CFL team should probably have their camp on a university campus. It keeps everyone together. The camaraderie that you talked about early in the podcast is clearly there with the Toronto Argonauts, and I would say for any team that sort of, you're staying in dorms, you've got the facilities to work with here, and they are beautiful facilities at the University of Guelph. Not necessarily this box that we're currently sitting in here, and it was interesting too, calling the game with Mike Hogan. We had no light in our broadcast booth. There's no lights, and so once the sun set, we were in darkness, and that was sort of a new experience. We both had our flashlight phones out as we're trying to see rosters and depth charts, and with 85 players on the Argos roster, we're just trying to cycle through my memory as best I can to be like, hey, who's that number 14 out there, and so on and so on. So that was an interesting experience. But I do like being here in Guelph, and that's something that I would like to see them continue. JB, before we sign off, let's make a prediction on quarterbacks. So let's assume Chad Kelly starts the season on the injured list. You're going to see Nick Arbuckle dressed in one of those three spots. Which other two quarterbacks are dressed week one for the Toronto Argonauts?
Yeah,
Do you want me to give you mine first, so you can think about it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see Arbuckle, Dukes, Horn, and I think it's going to be in that order. If Chad Kelly doesn't start week one, that's to me what the depth chart is going to be: Arbuckle, Dukes, Horn, and I think they try and get Jared Dagey on the practice roster if they can. But putting some good film down again, and he's got film around the league. Like he's played in 22 CFL games or something like that. So he's a known commodity in the CFL. We'll see how that goes, but that's my official prediction for quarterbacks.
I don't think Horn makes it. I'll say that. I think Horn is the one guy.
Okay. Well, we'll have to wait and see. It's a tough turnaround. You've got basically 12 hours to try and figure out which 40 guys are you moving on from. And I don't mean to say that lightly. These are guys that are out here. These are professional athletes that are out here trying to make a living and trying to earn a spot on a professional football roster. And it is. I hate how dismissive it is sometimes because it's just so quick. You've got that 12-hour turnaround. These guys are gone. You never hear from them again in a lot of cases. And these are exceptional athletes on every CFL team that are fighting for these roster spots. And it's a tough job to do. I don't envy the coaches having to make these last few decisions over these last few hours of preseason. All right, JB, it is time for us to sign off, but before we do, let's just talk about what we've got up next. We are starting our regular podcast schedule coming up. We are going to be with our midweek podcast, our pregame walkthrough podcasts, followed by our postgame reaction podcasts. And the next action that you'll see, the Toronto Argonauts open their season on the road next week in Montreal. It's Argos at Alouettes, a rematch of the East Final from last year, Friday night. And you can catch Mike Hogan and I on the TSN 1050 broadcast, and make sure you tune in to catch us on our pregame walkthrough midweek and our postgame reaction at the conclusion of next week's game for Montreal. That'll just about do it for us from Alumni Stadium in the University of Guelph campus. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the